Hello, welcome to Makeup and Monarchies. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany and I am a makeup artist that loves medieval history. So I like to put my makeup on and tell you about a person, place, or thing from Great Britain in medieval times. So this week we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a Valentine's Day special. So this week we're going to talk about royal matches that were really in love and loved each other and had successful marriages. Per usual, all the products I'm using are listed down below. If you're not already following me on Instagram and now TikTok, even though that thing scares the shit out of me, I can be found under the same name at Makeup and Monarchies. So head on over, give me a follow, and let's just get into it this week. Hello. So we're going to begin with our I'm calling it the Valentine's Day special. Today I'm going to talk about medieval, more modern, but like royal couples that really loved each other and may have gotten married for political reasons, but ended up really loving each other. So that's what we're going to do today because tomorrow's Valentine's Day. And I thought this would be a fun little break from our usual. I'm all set up for my next one anyways, but let's do this today. I'm just going to... Oh my God, did you see that? Start with... Put your shit together, Tiffany. I'm going to start with putting Skin Nova on. I probably should have put my hair back before I did this, but we're doing it anyways. Our first couple, which is Edward I and Eleanor of Castile. Edward is often referred to as Longshanks because of his long legs. And he was married Eleanor of Castile. Ooh, that's a nice one. Just do this. I gotta pull that off get it away from my face. He married Eleanor of Castile on November 1st of 1254 in Castile. He was 15, she was 13, so they were just little babies at the time of their marriage. They were happily in love until her death. He had encouraged her to be financially independent. I'm sorry about my voice today. And she held her own interests, managed estates. I'm just going to go in with the Vive Concealer to cover all my many spots. And I did a self-tan last night with U Tan and Tone. So it's all showing up. So Eleanor managed estates and helped work out issues between the nobles. During their marriage, though, she gave birth to 16 children. Only 5 daughters survived to adulthood, and one son outlived his father and became Edward II. There's a lot today to cover. But still with the eczema. Still. It's not as itchy. You're all lucky I still have my eyelids on because I was going to itch them off last weekend. During their 36-year marriage, Edward never had a mistress, which was really unheard of at that time because a lot of kings had mistresses. At one point, Edward was stabbed with a poisonous dagger, and it said that Eleanor sucked the poison from his body at the site of the wound, but it's more likely that the area was removed from his body. They modeled themselves after King Arthur and Queen Guinevere from the King Arthur myth. Eleanor succumbed from a fever on November 28th of 1290. I swear we're going to get through this today. I don't know, my voice is awful today. I don't know why. It's all like yucky. Edward was by her bedside and heard her final requests. After her death, he wrote, quote, "Whom in life we dearly cherished, and whom in death we cannot cease to love." So I have talked about him before in my Robert the Bruce episode. I'm just gonna say, as much as I absolutely cannot fucking stand Edward the First, this was a loving union, and I love his love for her, even though he was a bastard. Moving on to our next couple. Speaking of Robert the Bruce, we're going to go into Robert the Bruce and Elizabeth Deborah. I'm assuming this is pronounced the same way that you would pronounce Edinburgh. So, yeah. Robert was a widower when he met Elizabeth in 1300 on the Isle of Bute in Rothsay. He stayed with her for part of the winter and got her pregnant. Also had fallen deeply in love with her because at this point Robert was on the opposing side of both his father and Elizabeth's father. As long as he was on the side of Scotland, he couldn't marry Elizabeth because both their fathers were united with Edward the First. So he ended up changing sides and supporting Edward the First, and they got married in Essex, England in 1302. She was don't come for me, please. I'm just relaying information. Don't come for me. Facts, historical facts, okay? She was 13, he was 28, which sounds crazy, but only 15 years apart. I know she was young. I said, don't come for me. I'm just relaying information. So, 4 years after their marriage, Elizabeth was captured by the English and held under house arrest for 8 years. She was released as part of a ransom for an earl that was captured after the Battle of Bannockburn on September 29th of 1314. Elizabeth and Robert went on to have 5 children. Only 3 have reached adulthood. Elizabeth died before Robert after she fell from a horse. Robert died 18 months later, and they both now lay at rest side by side in Dunfermline Abbey. So today I'm doing like a soft romantical pinky look. So I'm just going in with my MAC. I just did my MAC shadow in Brule. Yeah, it's Brule. I always get Brule and Burn mixed up, even though they're very different. Now I'm just going to go in with my Malt transition shade, the transition shade called Malt from MAC. Next couple is Edward III and Philippa of Hainault. These two were married or betrothed in 1327, and they were married on January 24th of 1328 at York Minster. He was 15, she was 13. The birth of their first child, Edward of Woodstock, was on June 15th of 1330. It's said that she took an immediate like to him and cried when he left when they first met. They were married for 25 years total and had 8 sons and 5 daughters, and this was considered a success and a sign in God's favor. So I'm just going to go back in with that. See how it's like, it looks worse on there, but it's not hard in person. So I'm just going through and just pulling this out a little bit and blending that line. There we go. That's much better. So then I go through back in with the Malt color and just blend that line out. Philippa went with Edward in 1330 and the 1340s on his travels to Scotland and early campaign of the Hundreds Year War. Philippa was a great wife for Edward, advising him in private, intervened on behalf of people who were weak and or needy. She was also in charge of raising their big family. Eleanor was always in his corner and his companion in life. She had his best interests at heart and was somebody that Edward could trust. Philippa became very ill, and Edward rushed to her side at Windsor. He did have a mistress, but Philippa always came first. She died when she was 55, which is a really good age to live to back then, seeing as people died when they were younger. Edward didn't recover from the loss of his wife, so he did not marry. Edward's love life was much like his grandfather's, married around the same age, and they had tons of kids, and they were married for a very long time. Next is Catherine of Valois and Owen Tudor. Catherine was a dowager queen and a mother to 6-year-old Henry, King Henry VI. She was living in the king's household and being watched over by counselors. I'm just going in with the one of my Sigma small E45 with a darker like mulberry color. Forget what it's called from MAC though. It'll be listed down below. So she started a hanky-panky relationship with Owen, who was a Welshman and had been in France in 1421. So he was of service to Henry V. It's possible that Owen was appointed to Catherine's household. Hold on, I'm going to pull you guys in a little bit because I'm having a hard time. Yep. So this relationship began when Catherine was living at Windsor Castle and she became pregnant with their first child. She stopped living in the king's household at some point. There isn't a known date of their marriage, and the validity of it was questioned, as well as the legitimacy of their children in canon law. We covered canon law. I forget which episode we did that in, but I know I talked about it. I think it was the Neville girls that I talked about that before. So I'm just going in with this. I'm going to just pop this out. Oh, it's Embark. Duh. I don't know if you can hear like that squeaking noise. My cat Jack is snoring. So they ended up having 6 children together, who of which were half brothers to a king, a father to a king, and an uncle to a king. So they had some stake in the game. Edmund was their one of their sons. Edmund was the father of Henry the seventh. Owen was far below Catherine's station, so after his death, he was arrested for violating the law when he married Catherine. He ended up being pardoned by his stepson Henry VI and was part of his household. Owen died in the Battle of Mortimer's Cross in Herefordshire in 1461. I really tried my hardest to know the pronunciations and pronounce them correctly. So where I live, we have Worcester, and everybody has a hard time pronouncing that if you're not from here. So next on my list is my favorite couple of all time. Really and truly, I love them. Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville, Be Still My Heart. So the tales claim that they met under an oak tree when she was trying to retrieve her son's inheritance. It's said that Edward fell absolutely madly in love with her instantly and had to have her, but she wouldn't succumb to it and be a mistress. They married in a private ceremony in probably either May 1st of 1464. That's contested, and it's thought it's probably more likely it was late summer of 1464. The marriage was hidden for some time, just I think for not I think, but so that Edward could like handle or get a grasp on how he was going to handle it when he told people that he had secretly married a commoner. Specifically, that rat bastard, Earl of Warwick. I can't stand him. I'm just going to go back in with my last color and just blend this out a little bit. So their marriage became public, and Elizabeth's coronation was held at Westminster Abbey in 1465. Elizabeth gave birth to their first child, a girl named Elizabeth. The couple went on to have a total of 10 children together, including the princes in the Tower, Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury. During their 19 years of marriage, I'm just going to blend this out again. On the bottom, it's a little too heavy. And then I'm going to pull this in a little bit. Just to blend that so it like smoothly comes into that middle area. I know I said soft. Not what always happens, like when you say you're going to do a small wing liner and then it ends up being gigantic. And you go, I guess this is what it is today. I'm just going to blend a little bit more with this softer color. Look at that pan, huh? Here, we're just going to like, just bring that up and soften that a little bit. That's a little bit better. I think that this is up way too fucking high, huh? During their 19-year marriage, Edward did have a few mistresses, but Elizabeth was his love. There was no question of that. When he went to fight in France, Elizabeth was at the beginning of his wills. And he stated she is our most trusted and most beloved wife. He was very tall for the time. He was 6'2", and she was known as a beauty. He was a brunette, and she had like golden blonde hair. Some even say like strawberry blonde, because I think that's where the red came in. Henry VIII was a redhead. Elizabeth of York had like a reddish tint to her hair too, so I think that's where. Don't get me going on that gene, because it's so fascinating to me. So Edward died unexpectedly on April 9th of 1483. Their son Edward was now announced king, Edward V. A lot of drama ensued, but I think Elizabeth felt completely lost without him. Also, I did say it earlier, I'm going to say it again. This was the first marriage between a king and a commoner. I love them. I did want to say, so go on YouTube and look up, I think it's Royalty Now. She has the best videos. Like, I was in tears. She'll take like the old like paintings of them and AI create them as what they would look like in real life. They're stunning. She did an amazing job. I will link her YouTube down below. But I just go check it out. It is so good. She does such great videos. So that's them. I love them. Okay, I'm back. I'm just going to go in and blend out all that concealer. I did a little bit in between shots. I have a spot on my nose that I missed. Here we go. I'm going to go in again with the same concealer, just a little bit more. And then I'm going to add a little bit of this Skin Dew. And we're going to mix that up and we're going to put it on my face. I'm just going to kind of staple this on and then go through with the Beauty Blender. just to push it in. So our next couple is, this may be controversial, and listen, I'm just hoping for the best. I'm wishing for the best. I wish it was true. I don't know. But I'm going to say Richard and Anne Neville. I think they really, really did love each other. Yes, maybe stretching it. Probably. I am, but I'm still going to say it. These two had known each other since they were little kids. Richard had lived at Warwick Castle, and which was Anne's home, and went through knight training. After 1471, and after her father was killed in battle, her inheritance was on the line since her brother had previously married Anne's sister, Isabel. I'm just going to do my ears a little bit, and I'm going to just pull down. So Isabel had married, Anne's sister Isabel married Richard's brother George. So her inheritance was on the line because George wanted it all for himself. And Isabel wasn't really like helping her sister's case at all. She kind of stayed silently by. Shit sister, if you ask me. So Anne was under house arrest under George. So she wasn't deemed a traitor because of previous stuff that happened. If you want to learn more about her story, I have an episode on Isabel and Anne Neville. I'll link that below. Anyways, George had Anne hidden in plain sight. Story says that Richard found her and took her into sanctuary at St. Martin's Le Grand. They were married it's probably wicked loud, in the spring of 1472. Anne was almost 16 and Richard was 19. They had one son, Edward. His name was Edward. And they stayed mainly living in the north in Warwick Castle. It seems that Richard remained faithful to Anne. He did have two illegitimate children that were born. Seems they were born before 1471, so before their marriage. Now, there's a lot of drama that surrounds Richard in 1483. That is another story for another time. I have yet to do an episode on him, so sorry I can't reference you to that one. Anne was now queen. Richard is now king of England. Their son passed away from illness, and then Anne, now being 28, was unlikely to have another baby. Anne became sick with consumption, which now would be referred to as tuberculosis, and she died in the spring of 1485. Richard died in August of that same year during the Battle of Bosworth. They are not buried together. Anne's body is in Westminster, but it's a small plaque. When we go back, I'll have to look for it. I didn't see it when we were there. Richard's body was just found in 2012 in Leicester. Under a car park. So he is now in I believe Leicester Abbey. So that's where he lies. Moving on to our next couple. It will be Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. So this marriage ended the War of the Roses. Henry followed through on his promise that he made while he was in exile in December of 1483. He promised that he was going to marry Elizabeth of York, which they did in 1486 in Westminster Abbey. I'm just going to blend out my contour. So he was 29 when they married, and she was 20. She was known for her beauty, just like her mother. Her blonde hair and pale skin was often referred to, or she was often referred to, or known as an English rose. Henry was described as being attractive and that they made a striking couple. And while this marriage wasn't a love match, they did have affection for each other. They always stayed close to each other, except when Henry went to squash a rebellion and Elizabeth was having their first baby, Arthur. Henry would write letters to Elizabeth or refer to her with affection. Elizabeth would write poems about her happiness. I think that's cute. So, as I covered in my Elizabeth of York episode, Henry often showered her with gifts, as well as their 4 surviving children. After Elizabeth had given birth to their last child, Catherine, who died a few days after her birth, Elizabeth died of childbed fever. Henry ordered a luxurious funeral for her and left for Richmond Palace, where he was alone and collapsed in grief. He never married again because he didn't want to, and he passed away 6 years after her death. They are now buried together in Westminster Abbey. I'll refer back. I did post a picture that I took while we were there this past summer of their tombs. Oh, I need powder. My last couple is maybe controversial. Maybe again I'm stretching it. But I think they were really in love with each other. It may come as a surprise. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. It's Mary Queen of Scots and Francis, the Dauphin of France. Mary and Francis grew up side by side and were raised together in the French court after she was sent there from Scotland at the age of 5. They grew up betrothed from a young age. Francis was a year younger than Mary. They finally got married on April 24th of 1558 at Notre Dame in Paris, or Petit. They were married a little over a year when Francis was ascended to the throne after his father's death from a jousting accident. While reports say they were fond of each other, Francis adored her. And I do think that they did love each other. I mean, I think later on in life she became very jaded, and she'll always have a piece of my heart. I just feel so sorry for her. She was dealt a shit hand. It is reported that their marriage probably wasn't consummated because of how young they were. They were like fairly young teenagers when they got married. The two ruled side by side over a year for over a year when Francis got a middle of ear infection in November of 1560 and then died December 5th of 1560. Mary was in mourning for about 9 months and then went back to Scotland. After, I believe it was like a few years, or may have been like a year or so, she was, they had to get her married again. So she fell in love with Lord Darnley. We all know how that ended. Not well. I don't think that I don't think he loved her like she loved him. And it seems like he tried to use her, and when she didn't allow it, he lost his shit. And I talk about this in my Mary Queen of Scots episode. So you can go back to my profile or go on my page, my channel, and then it'll be in there. I'm going to jump off and I'm going to do my eyebrows and my mascara, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. So, usually I do a fun fact now, but I'm actually going to do honorable mentions of relationships that were love, they were in love. So my first would be Eleanor of Aquitaine and Henry II of England. Next is John of Gaunt and his first wife, Blanche of Lancaster. John of Gaunt and his third wife, Catherine Swynford, who was his mistress for a long time. And he, after his second wife died, finally ended up marrying his mistress, who he had several children with. I do believe he really did love her, obviously, because he kept going back for more and then put a ring on it. My next one is Charles Brandon and Mary Tudor, who was the youngest sister to Henry VIII. She's really crying today. My next one is George III and Queen Charlotte. I think they had 15 children together, and I really do, even through all the mental shit he went through, I think they really did love each other. And lastly, I have Charles and Camilla. Obviously the two of them have loved each other for looking at like 50 years. I don't want to hear anything. This is it. The proof is in the writing, right? I mean, they love each other, and that's all we can ask for, is to be loved by our spouse, right? So if you're into nonfiction and love to read about medieval stuff, you could probably look up it's called chivalric romance genre. And it may tickle your fancy. I know I'm going to be looking it up soon. That's all I have for this week. As usual, I have all the products I listed down below. I will tag the things I said I was going to tag, like Royalty Now. And yeah, that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a happy Valentine's Day. Spread the love, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.